What is up, guys? This is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm going to bring all of you guys my updated Monarch deck profile for this adjusted February 2016 format. Now, I really wanted to try and revise my Monarch list because I really wanted to fix the biggest problem plaguing Monarchs, which is how inconsistent their hands can be at times. So I really wanted to try and adjust my list and to really get a build that was more consistent than the average Monarch list. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right into the deck profile. Now, again, keep in mind that the consistency was like the most important aspect of this deck when I was trying to make it again. So that is why some of the card choices are going to seem a little bit weird. So yeah. So we're going to start off with the monster lineup first. Of course, we're going to have our Mega Monarchs up first. We're going to have 3 copies of the Ether, the Heavenly Monarch, followed up by 3 copies of Erebus, the Underworld Monarch. Now, these are going to be the only level 8 Monarchs we are running. I decided to cut Mega Chaos and Mega Thestalos simply because I found that they were actually breaking my hands a little bit more, as they cannot be normal summoned every turn, I guess you could say. Like, that's the easiest way I can describe it. Like, Thestalos and Chaos can actually help you brick hands just because of the fact that they cannot be normal summoned anytime, compared to Ether and Erebus, where you can usually tribute some of these guys at any moment in the game, and they'll usually be able to get their effect, whereas Thestalos cannot be summoned if your opponent doesn't have a hand, and Mega Chaos can just not be summoned if your opponent doesn't really have any big field. So because of that, I wanted to just keep the deck as consistent as possible and just use these guys as my big level 8 drops, just because they can use their effects at any given moment to help you advance your game state, as well as them having the ability to send the Monarch spells and traps from your deck to the graveyard to also advance your plays is just really crucial in my opinion, which can just help you get follow-up plays that you constantly are looking for when you're playing this deck. So yeah, that'll be the entire Mega Monarch lineup. Moving on to the other tribute summon I'm running, I'm also running 1 copy of Majesty's Fiend. Now, this card is really good against Cosmo, but it's kind of lackluster against everything else, because if your opponent plays a deck that uses Trapeze Magician, they can just make Trapeze Magician, run this over, and then go off from there. Like, I've had many times in testing where I would just summon this turn 1, and then my opponent would just immediately out it, and then I basically wasted a tribute summon. So because of that, I really didn't like multiple copies of it in the main deck. I just feel comfortable with 1, as again, if you draw this against Cosmo, they basically will have no out to it, and if you play against anything else, you only want to use this to supplement your already established Monarchs in every other matchup. So again, we only have 1 copy of Majesty's Fiend. Then for our tribute fodder, we're running 3 copies of Edia, the Heavenly Squire, and 3 copies of Eidos, the Underworld Squire. Now, I didn't get around to testing Quantum Monarchs yet. I understand that that's a very strong variant as well, but again, I wanted to just bring you guys a list that I was comfortable with, as I wasn't really versed with all the Quantum monster effects. So because of that, I am sticking with just the generic Edia Eidos tribute fodder engine for this deck. So that'll round us off of all of our monsters. Moving on to our spells, we have quite a few 3-ofs. We have 3 copies of Pantheism of the Monarch, because this card is a really busted draw card. We have 3 copies of Domain of the True Monarch, because this is good against Draco Performer Pals and any rogue deck, although it's not too good against Cosmo. But you still need to run 3 because getting the attack boost against certain matchups is really important. Then we also have 3 copies of the Monarch Stormforth. This is going to be one of the notable changes that I made to the Monarch spell list, just because of the fact that I predict Cosmo is going to be a bit more popular than it once was, and because of that, you want to have the option to search Stormforth off of Pantheism whenever you need it, just so again, you can clear those Cosmo Dark Destroyers and Cosmo Foreigners off your opponent's side of the field whenever you have access to this card. So again, we have 3 of the Stormforth. And then finally, for the last Monarch spells, we have 3 copies of Tenacity of the Monarch, because this searches out all of your other Monarch spells. So yeah, that'll be it for all of the 3 of Monarch spells. And then moving on to the 1-ofs, we only have 1 copy of March of the Monarchs and 1 copy of Return, just because none of these effects, like between these spells, stack. So because of that, you never want to have multiples of Return or multiples of the March, because again, their effects don't stack. So you only need 1, because they are fairly searchable off of things like Tenacity. So yeah, we have these guys to round off our Monarch spell lineup. Moving on to quite a few of our deck thinning spells. We first start off with 3 copies of Upstart Goblin, because this makes us a 37 card deck. So because of that, it helps us just statistically get a little bit more consistency. Then I'm also running 3 copies of Chicken Game as well, just to make our deck 34 cards now essentially. And it's also searchable off of the Terraforming, which I'm going to show off in a second. And again, it's just more deck thinning for this deck to help you try and draw into your combo pieces a little bit faster. And then speaking of the Terraforming, we also have 2 copies of that, just because this searches out your Chicken Game if you you ever need it to get to those deck thinning plays. And you also can use terraforming to actually search out domain as well, so that you don't have to per se blow your one tenacity or your one pantheism search per turn on a domain. So you can just use terraforming as another way to get to your domain, so you can search out other Monarch spells. So yeah, that'll be it for the drawing and searching of field spells and all that kind of weird stuff. Then moving on to the final couple of spells, we have one copy of Rhoda because this searches out Edia. We have one copy of 1-for-1 because this special summons Edia. And then finally for the last spell, we have one copy of Foolish Burial. Now, honestly, I don't know why I wasn't running this in my old Monarch list, just because it's so good. Like, this essentially functions as an 8th Monarch that you can summon, because you can simply send Erebus with this card, and then if you have a Monarch spell or trap in your hand already, you can just send it for Erebus's effect to grab the same Erebus back. So again, it acts as another copy of a Monarch in our deck, as well as you can also use it to toolbox your Eidos and your Edia a little bit better as well. So yeah, that'll be it for the entire spell lineup of this deck. And then for the last two cards, it's just our 2 copies of the Prime Monarch. Now, I don't feel like 3 is necessary, or more than 2 anyway, just because of the fact that you only need 1 in your grave to act as a tribute fodder, and then the other one will be just on your field to help you constantly recycle your Monarch spells and traps continually and get you draws. So I really felt like the 3rd copy had no real use outside of like being like another copy, like if one of these gets banished for some reason. So yeah, that'll be it for the entire Monarch deck profile for this updated February 2016 format. I hope that you all did very much enjoy this video, and as always, this is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace out.